Alright, let's talk about Lawbringer in 2023 in For Honor, and if he will ever be in the meta again. Now, I wanted to go over a few things about him and what I've seen in For Honor with Lawbringer. Now, let's start from the beginning when he was in the meta. So, around 2017-ish, in For Honor's lifespan, Lawbringer was a pretty good hero. He had hyper armor and all the fancy stuff, as I'd say. And with all this, people were complaining that he was either too broken or he wasn't good enough. So then when Ubisoft decided to nerf him, it was a pretty big deal for both sides. And they took away his hyper armor and his attack time, which was a pretty fatal blow to Lawbringer, as before this, when they did the damage nerfs, he was still able to have his faster attacks, he was still able to have his hyper armor, and now in the current time period, can't speak. Anyway, now in the current time period, Lawbringer has neither. He has slower attacks that are easier to parry, they don't do as much damage. And I just want to bring this up because they're coming in 2023, and there's been rumors that Lawbringer will have a buff sooner or later, or not. I don't know. None of these rumors have been confirmed by Ubisoft. And Ubisoft's joked around with it before, but they've never actually acted on it or brought up anything past just hinting at it. And I personally don't think that they will ever buff Lawbringer, at least not seriously, because in the current state that he's in, he is one of the, bottom tier heroes, because the average person that doesn't spend much time playing him, he's not very good. But if you take the time to play him and get good with him, then he's pretty good. So there's no real in-between. You're either good with him or you're bad with him. There's no, mediocre in the middle with him. And it's a huge problem for most players, the skill gap. And I would say skill issue, but I would sound like a complete, that's a word I can't say on YouTube. But with that, and Lawbringer's current decline, I would say that he's near the bottom, and I'm not the best with him. I do have my fair share of experience though with him. I've spent 22 reps out of my 25 just playing with him. He's my most used character, and I main him a lot, but even I can point out the flaws that he has, like for example the slower attack speed that I brought up earlier, and the other various nerfs that have been added to his resume, I guess you could say. But with this all in mind, I think that he will never be in the meta again just because of this, because he's really far gone and he's outclassed by a lot of the heroes that have been added in the newer seasons and years that have come up, and he's not really just up there with them. He's more so of a hero that you play either as like a joke or as just... There's not many Lawbringer players out there that are actually willing to play the character anymore because he's been nerfed so heavily in other heroes that have been added, and he's just really power crept. His moveset's not really as good as it used to be, and not really as effective as they once were. And a lot of people will complain that him blinding you is really annoying. And sure, he's really annoying to fight, but anyone can really parry almost any of his attacks. Even his lights aren't really that effective. Yes, he does have pretty fast side lights, and most people, myself included, cannot parry them. And I can't speak for everyone, but that's just my experience. But I feel like they should add, I don't know, I'm not going to go off tangent here, but they should maybe buff his attack speed or give him hyper armor back on his shove, or at least increase the speed on some of his attacks, because with the current meta, he doesn't fit in at all. And you can see me in this clip of this breach match getting destroyed by a bunch of Hitokiris, and I'm pretty sure this was a Jormungandr Hitokiri, and I cannot see the other one as recording this. This voiceover is after, so I'm not directly in the match. Anyway, moving on. Oh, it's Napoleon. But anyway, moving on. I just don't think he fits in with some of the other heroes. His feats are pretty mediocre. His attack speed's bad. He doesn't have many he doesn't have any redeeming features that most heroes have, or any trade-offs. Like, for example, Jormungandr, which most people consider a pretty bad hero, can drain your stamina really quickly, and it's super effective against most heroes that don't have very good stamina balancing, like Lawbringer, for example, which you can only have a couple heavies, maybe a light, and maybe a bash tag, and you'll be completely out of stamina, and you'll be super vulnerable. Of course, it depends on the player. If you're careful with it and you watch it, then it doesn't really matter too much. But he doesn't have any unique quirks anymore, and most heroes can match him very easily. And I feel like he should be buffed to fit in more so than he has been, because he hasn't been buffed for a while. And with the stamina nerfing that's just happened, where if you're on the ground and someone hits you, I really suck at this, but if someone hits you more than once, I believe if you're out of stamina, if it's any hit, it could be 2 lights and you would get all your stamina back. Now, I'm not 100% sure if I'm wording this correctly, but that's from my experience. I've put people to the ground and I've hit them once or twice, and they'll have all their stamina back, and they'll get up, which Lawbringer's biggest feature, his biggest quirk in recent times, was his out-of-stam punish. It was the best in the game, by far, and it could do, close to like 70 or so damage, if you did it correctly. So, with this current, you can still kind of do that, but it takes a lot more, and the player that you're fighting against has to be not the best to actually pull it off. And with Lawbringer, in this current clip, you can see me getting destroyed by Hitokiris. Now, I'm not good at fighting them by any means. There's definitely people that are better out there, but for example, as I'm using Hitokiri, is a lot better hero that fits into the meta. For example, Hitokiri's one-shot, or the hyper armor, and all that, and the attack damage being a lot higher than Lawbringer's, which doesn't really make sense, but For Honor doesn't really make sense. So, just giving it a look and looking back on this clip and doing this voiceover, I can tell that Lawbringer's not really, I guess, the best hero to be playing, and comparing him to something like Hitokiri that's just superior in almost every way, it's just not really, I don't know, it's just power crept, and he doesn't really stand up to most heroes today, and isn't really as effective as he once was. Now, I know I'm going to sound like I can constantly complain about this, and I probably am, but this is my opinion. Of course, some people might think other than this, but with all my time playing as Lawbringer, I can say that he's definitely not as good as some of the other heroes added to the game, and he's definitely not as effective as he once was. And just going over how he's aged and how he's adjusted to all the new heroes added to the game, I can clearly see that he's not, I guess, as effective, because his parry punishes are pretty good. He can blind you and get a heavy off on you, but that's all if you're not expecting it, or you're not waiting for him, or you're just good enough to parry when you're blinded. And a lot of people nowadays are, and it's not very looking good for Lawbringer with all these nerfs on stamina and all that. He's just really been killed off by all the stuff that's been added to the game, and it's really sad to see, because he used to be a really good hero and used to be pretty effective at just general game modes, when people complained that he was too broken, so Ubisoft decided to nerf him, and it's pretty sad. I know I keep saying that, but it's not looking good for him going into 2023. And if he does get buffed, I'll make a video on it, and I'll, I guess, correct myself. But as of now, it does not look like he will receive any buff at any time, at least not anytime soon. I can't say that for sure, but I can say that he's definitely not quite as good as he used to be at just, I guess, being a hero and fitting into the meta. And I know there's a lot better players than me with Lawbringer that would disagree, or there's people that don't like fight against Lawbringer and can't really do as good against him, that find him really annoying or find him overpowered. And I know that, and I'm not saying like that he's incredibly underpowered, because I know there's worse heroes like Nuxia, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, or Nabushi, who are way worse than Lawbringer and can be countered pretty easily. But just looking at it, he's one of the bottom tier heroes. And I'm going to put a graph up on screen. And as you can see by looking at this graph, is Lawbringer's kind of in the middle of it. And if you didn't see him, you can go back, pause, and look for yourself. But it was around like the 47% range where he was. Now I know that's not terrible, in that heroes like Warden, who have also been power crept, are closer to the bottom. But comparing him to heroes added recently, he's nowhere near them in terms of stats, and he's not nearly as effective as he once was for actually damaging or actually applying pressure to most heroes, because they can fight him off pretty easily with little to no difficulty. And this pretty sad truth for Lawbringer is I don't think he will ever be able to, like, I guess, fit into the meta or actually challenge heroes like Mage, and I'm pronouncing that wrong, I know, or Shigoki, and heroes like that are just, they have their quirks and features, like Shigoki's number of bashes, or him being able to hit you super far, or some other quirks on other heroes that I haven't mentioned yet, for example, Orochi. And I know Orochi's been reworked and nerfed a couple of times as well, and I'm not hating on any Orochi players. I have a lot of respect for Orochi players, even if I don't appreciate it outside of playing the game, because Orochi's also pretty difficult to play and master, and it takes a while. But Lawbringer's definitely way below Orochi and JJ and Tiandi. They're all above Lawbringer by a long shot. Even Warmonger and Conqueror before he was buffed was not better than Lawbringer at all. He was a lot worse, actually. Conqueror was one of the bottom of the barrel heroes before his rework. And yes, I know that maybe I'm just bad and I can't play some of these heroes or play against them, but some people might have different opinions. But in my opinion, I do not think that Lawbringer is very efficient anymore, just because of how many times he's been nerfed. It's just kind of butchering his overall effectiveness, because he no longer has his good CCU or his hyper armor or anything, which doesn't allow him to have any real advantage over any heroes added in the future or in the current meta. Like, for example, when Pirate was broken, everyone complained about that, but I, in my personal experience, have not encountered a Pirate that I couldn't beat, but a lot of people complained about Pirate, and I feel like it's going to be that long for the future that there's going to be a broken hero, and it'll be fixed later rather than being fixed now, and that's really bad for heroes like Lawbringer, Nuxia, and I know I'm pronouncing that wrong, don't yell at me, I'm sorry, but it's just not going to be good for them in the future, because they're not as effective anymore as they were, or they just weren't effective in the first place. And that's really sad because a lot of the people that play these are a minority in the game now because they've moved on to heroes that are better, that are more effective, and that they can do better with. And it's just kind of the sad truth about Lawbringer is he's not as good as he once was, and I don't think he ever will be able to, I guess, match up against any heroes that are better. And even heroes like Centurion, who some people consider pretty bad, or pretty good depending on your viewpoint on him, is they can beat him pretty easily and have a lot more options for attacks and combos than Lawbringer does. And I wish Lawbringer would be buffed, but in this current time, I don't think Ubisoft will ever revisit the Lawbringer buffing, I guess. I don't know how to say it, but like, maybe pandemic, I guess, when people all thought that Lawbringer was going to be buffed. And I don't think Ubisoft will ever revisit the idea of buffing Lawbringer just because he's more of a forgotten or subpar hero. And sure, he's really cool, he looks cool, he's this huge guy with a bunch of armor and a really cool weapon. And that's actually what drew me to Lawbringer when I first started playing. But it's kind of ironic that this huge dude with a weapon that's bigger than most people in the world and should be really, really dangerous is outclassed by, for example, Shaolin, which is just a dude with a stick. So I'm not saying that they should make Lawbringer some overpowered, like, monstrous hero that everyone's afraid to fight. But what I am saying is that at least buff him or make him fit into current For Honor, even if that means that you have to change his moveset or heavily rework him. I would just be happy seeing his hyper armor return, or giving him faster attacks so he actually can participate. Because Lawbringer in his current state is terribly ineffective in For Honor, and this is just my rant on this, and I'm not trying to sound like I complain about it a lot, because I really do. I'll continue to play him, and I'll continue to make videos on him, but I just want to put out there that I don't believe he's very good anymore. And that kind of summarizes all that I've wanted to say in this video, and I know there's time left in the video, so I'm just going to let you watch it out and enjoy it without me interrupting anymore. But this has been my rant on Lawbringer in his current state, and thank you for watching if you did watch up to this point.